driving up and down.
You let me know when you're ready.
Inside the city, we own 23, which is the largest landowner there.
Yeah.
How do I keep this in
But
my
look at
I don't know why.
moving into these areas.
I find myself doing that too.
And that's all
Yeah.
other people.
We can pass these to the back row.
I look at Cedar Keys before all the Northern folks
Why not? They'll keep you out of trouble.
park your boat at your house.
Are you ready? All right.
Down here.
We're going to call this meeting back to order. It is 7:50 p.m. This is still the Tuesday, November 7th regular city council meeting for the city of Williston. We are at the open public hearing for item G, ordinance. And y'all, please bear with me. I have to read this into the record. If I run out of breath, y'all can do it for me. Ordinance 2023-722, an ordinance of the city of Williston, Florida, amending, restating, consolidating, supplementing, and replacing the city of Williston ordinances, providing a title and purpose, providing definitions, providing acronyms, providing for connections with the city water, wastewater, and reclamation water systems required with certain exceptions, establishing for a line extension program, regulating water, wastewater, and reclaimed water connections for improvements, meters required, prohibiting cross connections between systems, providing for installation of and standards for backflow prevention devices, prohibiting unlawful connections and interference with hydrants or water, wastewater and or reclamation water services, regulating construction or alteration of water distribution systems, wastewater collection system or reclamation water distribution system connected to the city water, wastewater, or reclamation water system, providing for connection and improvements within areas served by water, wastewater, and or reclamation water utility systems required by the city, providing for maintenance for plumbing systems, providing unlawful damage to city water, wastewater, or reclamation water systems, providing for right of entry for purpose of making inspection, providing for water, wastewater, and or reclamation water lines to be city property, providing for water, wastewater, and reclamation water capacity commitments, providing for cancellation of water, wastewater capacity commitments, and forfeiture of unit connection fees, providing for waste discharge limits and prohibitions, providing for industrial wastewater discharge permitting, providing for public information on industrial users, providing for water rates changes, water rates charges and fees, providing for wastewater rates, charges, and fees, providing for reclamation water rates, charges, and fees, providing for payment of fees and bills, refusal or discontinuance of service and delinquent notices, providing for water, wastewater, reclamation, water tapping fees and wastewater service location assistance fees, providing for water, wastewater, reclamation water unit connection fees, providing for collection of wastewater fees where owner has private or other water supply, providing for deposits of water, wastewater, and or reclamation water, providing for refund of deposit and interest of deposit, interest on deposit, providing for water, wastewater, and or reclamation water deposits for delinquent account holders and high-risk penalty charges, providing for water, wastewater, and or reclamation water service charges, providing for water, wastewater, and or reclamation water billing adjustments, providing for returned payments, providing for discontinuance of service at account holder's request, deposit transfers, prohibiting free service, providing for changes to rates and costs, providing for enforcement of penalties, establishing procedures for appeals, providing for jurisdiction, providing for severability, providing for the effect of this ordinance and on previous ordinances and conflicting ordinances repealed, consolidating operation of main division, making ordinances available to the public, incorporation of schedules and exhibits, providing for an effective date. Mr. Barber, really? Please lead us through this. That's
At a
great.
workshop in March of this year, the council and the residents participated in presentations concerning future of water and wastewater departments, presentations from the city engineer Wright Pierce, finance director Stephen Bloom, and Diana Stewart from the Florida Rural Water Association. Council was shown the inability to continue these critical services unless rate structures were changed and adjusted for the future. Even necessary capital improvements had no funding except through grants. Besides the rate structure, the water and wastewater ordinances had not been updated or looked at for the last 20 years or more. Before the council are changes used in our current budget and the updating of the code for the city of Williston water and wastewater. I believe we have Stephen Bloom on the line, and he wanted to address the council at this time.
Welcome, Mr. Bloom.
Yes, good evening. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes,
So,
sir.
at the core of this is the, increasing the base rates for water and wastewater. And as if you remember through our exciting budget workshops and the budget process, we talked about each time we went through it, the fact that this budget was built with these particular increases in mind as they kind of went through it with the rate consultants. So this is kind of the next step in what we've already talked about, and the fact is that, your budget is, it needs this for all the things that Donald said, and probably many more, including the rising cost of everything, as we're trying to kind of look both now and into the future. In addition, kind of on the final point here is, as we've talked about and gone through the financials when we look at them, the goal has always been and will continue to be for each of these services to be able to stand by themselves. And again, so much for so many years has been relying upon electric. And again, it's just another reason why this is being brought in front of the council.
Thank you for that reminder. I think we have reminded ourselves as we've gone through the last couple meetings that we knew the budget was built on these increases. And here they are finally for us to consider. As I told Mr. Barber earlier this afternoon, this is one of the most technically challenging ordinances I have ever read. I found myself referring back and forth to the definitions and the acronyms as I read it. It's overwhelming of the size of it, but I think it includes every single thing that might possibly come before us in the future. I think they've done a lot with rural water to try to make sure that everything is here that they could possibly think of so that we wouldn't have to come back and do it again. So I guess we'll stop right here and we'll either let Mr. Barber lead us through it or we will ask questions, whichever you prefer. You have any particular method you would like to do this? Yep.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and take a peek at it. I wanted to also mention that I believe last meeting, Purvis and Davis were in here, and that was the other component I think Stephen and I both failed to mention, is that this was one of the main tenets on the beginning page of recommendations that they had made, that we had already dealt with electric, we've already dealt with gas, but they recommended that all utilities across the board have rate adjustments because they said that that's primarily the reason that they believed that some of the reserves were not in the shape that they wanted to see or recommend for the city. So if you go through, you have your table of contents, and you can always reference back to that. Basically everything that was read for the record is a summation of the table of contents. Of course, your section 1 is your title and purpose, and then section 2 is, of course, for many, many pages, a definition section. And by being familiar with this, it will make it a lot easier to reference back at many times and in many sections as to what certain things are referring to. A lot of these are common in the industry. A lot of these are federal and state either recommendations, standards, and things of that nature. Of course, alphabetically listed. We have our acronyms in section 3 found on page 19. And of course, because it's already a large document, we didn't want to spell out every word every time. So you'll find a lot of those there. Just to point out a couple that are the most important is, of course, CAL, City of Williston, DEP, Department of Environmental Protection. You have things like equivalent irrigation connection, EIC, and ERC, equivalent residential connection, and equivalent residential unit, ERU. You'll all remember that during the capacity fee studies and presentations by Catherine Van Zant, Florida Rural Water, that a lot of those calculations and how we came to all those things were through those mathematical procedures. And so much of the rates was done. You look at your customer base, how many people are paying in, the cost of managing that system, and it breaks down to a certain price. And that's a lot of why the recommendations are where they are. So that's really the acronym section. And then, I mean, we could go through every single section, but I didn't know if there was ones that people had specific questions on. If you guys want to flip to the back, the very back, starting on page 216 in your agenda packet, you will see that the utility rate tariffs that are mentioned throughout the entire document. These are, on page 216, your drinking water rates. These are, you'll see, basically inside and outside are broken apart. And then, of course, below that, from your base rates on the same page, are your residential and commercial usage rates. Now, again, this is specific to a 5/8 meter. That is your typical residential meter. And then even a lot of smaller businesses have the same size 5/8 meter. On page 217, you'll see your wastewater rates, again, based on 5/8 meters, and residential and commercial usage rates below that. I want to point out that one of the feedbacks that we got from Florida Rural Water's presentation in March that we took to heart was that they had said at every point we should charge for sewer. Council had said years ago there was many discussions on this, and it was their desire to see our 0 to 5,000 basically maintained. So we did take that into account, and we made that change. So the first 5,000 gallons of sewage, which I would say a vast majority, probably over 70% of the residential users, do not go over that $5,000 or 5,000 gallons, excuse me, of discharge from the wastewater. On page 218, you will see the changes in sizes for both drinking water and wastewater. Again, as we spoke about, Florida Rural Water in their presentation talked a lot about the cost of managing assets at 2-inch and 4-inch and 6-inch are vastly different from a 5/8 meter. They tend to have a lot more equipment above ground, RPZs, or what we call backflows or backflow preventers. So that takes into consideration for both water and wastewater. Of course, the discharges for wastewater are much higher. If you think of some of the larger businesses, some of the commercial or industrial businesses out maybe at the airport, you talk about here in town, some of the new businesses that have been built where the former high school was. There's a couple of new commercial buildings, more going up. So all that take into consideration in saying that a meter that's a 6-inch that can cost 20-some thousand to replace, we shouldn't charge $9.30 a month for, because we'll collect for 30 years and still not pay for what the cost of replacing that meter is, and that's currently where we're at. Then if you look at page 219, you have your fee schedule. So these aren't consumptive or base rates. These are when we put in water meters, when we tap mains, deposits, what are fines and fees. All of those are listed here on page 219 for water. And then 220 is your wastewater. So just to tell you, the metric there was to basically look at, I give the example in the workshop, $510 to install a water meter box. All in, we are with labor, materials, and the costs that are escalating, we are high above that. We are closer to $2,000 by the time we get there now. So we're losing quite a bit of money every time we do that. Same thing with the sewer tap connection, the work to dig down to the main, the pavement replacement, which is why a lot of times I think they abandoned the pavement replacement years past and tried to cold patch and hope that solved the problem, which it hasn't. But then you look at your hydrant meters on your water fee schedule, for example. That's where an industry or a business, let's say Duke Energy or a construction company doing building in town, has a water tanker. If they go up to a hydrant, it has a meter. If someone breaks that meter or steals that meter, we have $4,000 or $5,000 in it, and previously we were charging $800 as a deposit. So we're trying to not shock people, but upgrade those to a more reasonable cost that is comparative to what other people would expect at other counties and municipalities. So again, at this time, if you guys have any questions or anything that you are not certain about or whatnot, I can do my best to answer those for you.
Mr. Robinson.
I have two. What is the current fee? Is there no comparable between the current and the increased fee here?
Yes, sir. I thought you might ask that, and another council member asked that after we published everything, and so I'll have Jason come up here and he'll have everything side by side for you. But I wasn't asked for that. I was not asked for that except by a council member. That's the only reason why I created it.
I talked to Terry Friday, and he said that you were going to have it out by Monday. That's just what
Terry indicated to me it was for those who wanted to come see me and address it.
and I asked him to have it emailed to me.
I'm sorry, sir. I didn't get that message. I apologize.
Okay. Another question. Should the water increase be one ordinance and the remainder of this be another ordinance? Why is it incorporated in one ordinance?
Because it's utilities. If you'll notice, we even have reclaimed water in here, which we don't currently have.
No, that's,
But we're building an ordinance for the future that prevents us from having to go back and deal with a lot of issues. Water and wastewater are interconnected. For example, billing for wastewater has to be done through water because it's your water meter that tells you your consumption on sewer, unless you have an irrigation meter, and then you're exempted from the sewer charge. So they're locked at the hip. Our current ordinances for water and wastewater are together. They're in the same section, same ordinances that pass them. So where we got this, I didn't write this by hand, where we got this is we asked Florida Rural Water, Wright Pierce, and others in the industry. We reached out to other communities, and we said, what is an ordinance right now that is doing really well in the state of Florida, that is working for development and for changes to address the problems that people are having? And all organizations, all three of them, came back with one person or one county, and it was St. Johns County. The significance of that is that Wright Pierce, who we use for engineering, recently hired the retired director who served 36 years in St. Johns County, and he was the director there and created this and was the director for 22 years. So I worked with Mr. Young, Bill Young from Wright Pierce, and we took the St. Johns ordinance and we took out the parts that were not relevant to us, and we built upon that as a foundation. So we basically catered an ordinance that's been tried and tested, and we utilized that to begin to rebuild ours because ours was so deficient in talking about so many issues.
I have a copy.
We have another one here.
I have an extra one. Thank you.
so we're going up. The current residential, that's wastewater.
Yes, sir.
On the back is water.
It's going up $36 a month.
Yes, sir. That is the recommendation that was put into the workshop. If you remember the chart that was given by both Wright Pierce and Florida Rural Water, it showed what our costs are to run the wastewater department. Wastewater is probably in the worst shape of all of them because of the lack of investment in capital and the needed things that we're going to be required to do for compliance. For example, the plant build out, upgrades to lift stations, all those things. Mains that are old from the 40s and 50s. That's the Chastain study that Dennis Davis completely constantly references. And they took what our system costs and what if it was to operate in the black, what it would take, again, through the ERUs and all those things, and they calculated it, and that was the rate that they said if we want to continue to be in the black, that this would be the rate that would be sufficient.
Are most of residential on 5/8 inch?
Yes, sir. Like I said, For residential, residential wouldn't have a 2-inch meter in, except, I can't think of a resident that has a 2-inch meter.
Okay.
Okay, so let's start with this page that says water and wastewater, but it says water.
Okay?
Let's not start on the water side, the wastewater side's on the back. Let's start on the water side. It says the old rate is $9.30. I mean, let's just actually say it out loud here. The old rate is the base rate, not including consumption, the base rate $9.30.
Yes, ma'am.
And the new rate will be $20.46.
Yes, ma'am. That is the recommendation by the workshop founding. Yes.
Okay. And on the next column to the right, the commercial is currently $9.30, which is exactly the same as residential, even though they may have a huge water meter rather than the 5/8 inch. It's still $9.30 because that's what our ordinance says. It's going to $22.79 for that 5/8 inch meter, and you see them grow as you go down, down farther below,
Yes, that would be the chart reference, new wastewater commercial rates below.
at the bottom.
And again, once you get over a 2-inch, there are very few that have anything below that. I think we have a couple of 6-inch in town. We have a big commercial industry that has an 8-inch, but other than that, I don't think that those are even in existence at the current time.
The other thing that was pointed out to me when I looked at this, if you start on the water usage, which is the left-hand column under old, where it says 16 cents per 100 gallons up to 5,000 gallons, and you move right over to the new, we're now charging by 1,000 gallons, not by 100 gallons. So if it had been before, it would have been $1.60 per 1,000 gallons. It's going up to $3.52 per 1,000 gallons. I'll just give you some reference there. And you see the larger consumption as you go down. Price goes up as you use more.
So for 5,000 gallons, it'd be around $18.
Right. Thank you. And you see the drinking water, because we're talking about water, the drinking water commercial rates are below. Those have changed a lot because they were all at the current rate. Am I right about that, Donald? They were
Yes,
all at
yes,
the
ma'am,
current rate.
that is
So-
correct.
So now this is going up by size, which we did not do before. They were all the same no matter what the size of their water meter.
And that was, of course, because that the greater meters have a greater impact, and so we didn't feel, well, not we, but the experts and other communities feel that it's not fair for someone to have a larger discharge and a larger meter to maintain and pay the same rate as a resident.
I agree.
And for reference, you said some of our commercials are mostly 4 and 6 inches.
Yes, ma'am, there's a couple of 4 inches.
And
There's, I
there's a
think, only 2
school-
6 inches that I know of, and then there is one 8-inch that I am aware of.
Okay, and you said there was one school that had 4 inch and one school that had a 6 inch.
Yes, ma'am.
Just for reference, so you see how we're impacting the schools and other nonprofit organizations that are such as us.
But again, I reference, so if you look at Williston Elementary School, for example, we've been guesstimating their meter and everything's been broken in the vault for over 2 years. We've been guesstimating their usage, which we obviously are going to do on the lower end. That's going to cost over $20,000 to replace that vault. They've been paying $9.30 a month.
Because that's what our current ordinance says.
Correct.
So that's why we need to do this.
And these meters last, on that scale, they last around, they should be basically replaced around a 10-year period of time.
Right. Okay, so let's flip the page to the other side where it says wastewater. This is where it gets hard. And you've heard the reasoning that they've given us. The old rate is currently $33.75. That's what a residence is paying. The new rate that's being proposed is $69.19. You see the usage tiers under that, based, again, initially, it was based on 100 gallons. They've moved it to 1,000 gallons. So again, it's currently $1.35 for 1,000 gallons. But it's exempted, the first 5,000 are exempted. Because that's what our ordinance says, and they know we want to keep it that way. So after that base rate, it's based on consumption, based on thousands of gallons of water. If you look at the very bottom, you can see the current consumption numbers.
So still, why is the price the same, basically the same for residential and commercial?
Which one would you
If
be referring to?
commercial is more expensive.
Well, because
I mean,
of the
if
previous page.
commercial is larger, I'm sorry.
Well, yes, because that would be a 5/8 commercial. So that would be the same size meter as a resident.
As a residential?
But if you turn back over to the water side, I have the one chart that says new wastewater commercial rates. And again, that's based on your water meter size. Conceivably, your intake is going to dictate your output. So again, they wouldn't be paying the same because the base rate for those would be a greater number for commercial as they escalated in meter size.
These are per month charges.
So the average, to give you an example, the average business in town would have a 2-inch meter. Any new development requires a business that's not a smaller business to have a 2-inch meter. And so if you look at the 2-inch meter rate, it's $270 at the base rate. So they wouldn't be paying the same as a resident. But we didn't want to punish.
For the 2-inch, but if they had
Right.
the 5/8, they'd be paying the exact same as.
Right, but again,
a resident.
this was for like small businesses in town. You have small businesses in the downtown, for example. You have small businesses across the street. You have Lanes, you have Williston Tire, you have the Junction, so those types of business don't have a lot of output. So we didn't want to hit them any harder than what the residents were hit because they're not really using any more than an average resident would use. That's why we went from a standard rate and not doing any kind of equitable share to going to businesses recognize if you use more, you should pay more. But if you're a business that uses the same as a resident or an average resident, then we don't need to charge you more because you've met the burden of how you're using the systems.
Okay, now we have these other 2 pages that they gave us. One says utility rate tariff at the top, and it says water fee schedule. As you see here, what they have written in black is what their proposed new rate is for those things. You see some of them are new that we're not charging for at all now. And what the current, if there's anything that we currently have, you'll see the price is right next to it in red. So we're talking about water now, and it's the water fee schedule. And this is based on an ordinance that we currently have that we're currently using. And I asked the question when I came and talked to them earlier, what is the difference between a new water tap fee and a new connection fee? Because to me it sounds like the same thing because I'm not a technical person. Basically, the new water tap fee includes a meter and a shutoff valve on the client, the customer's side. So they can cut off their own without calling the city to ask them to have to do that. The new water tap fee, the new connection fee, they get a new connection but no meter. For some reason, they need a new connection. Maybe the other one went bad or something, or they need an additional one. But it doesn't include the meter or the cutoff. That's why it's so much less. And the reconnection fee, the temporary connection fee, the leave it on agreement, the read-only fee, the transfer fee, all those things are, some of those, no, I won't say all, some of those things are currently in policy, but they're not in an ordinance anywhere. So we've now included what our policy is in the ordinance.
Yeah, a lot of those are resolutions throughout many years that y'all have passed and indicated.
Right.
A good example of that is the read-only fee. A customer calls in, my bill's wrong, and you go out, you verify everything was done correctly, the meter's working properly, and you go back, and because they asked for that and there was no deficiency on the city side, we basically try and make sure that we didn't lose that ability for that staff to be doing something else. So, and we've been doing that for many years, longer than I've been here.
With the charge?
Yes, sir.
What about the temporary? What's the difference in that?
So temporary would be like your inspection process through permitting. Your builder would come in, he doesn't have a CO, so water can't be permanently on. But in order to have the building inspector come in and look at things, or maybe, well, I could say power, but this is water. But for water, it would be a temporary fee to, you know, show that the home piping in the inside had held integrity.
Gotcha.
And then, of course, we would go right back out and turn it off.
So you said the fee, read-only fee was already there. Why does it say that it's a new category?
Because it's never been an ordinance. So we wanted to make sure
That's
that
policy now.
that it was an ordinance, because obviously that's a little bit more difficult to change than, and it's less stress on the council, quite frankly, to have people come in and say, you know, we don't agree with this policy and we think you should give us an exception. And what it allows you guys to do is say, look, this is ordinance. So unless we go through and change the ordinance, this is what's been decided to be done. And as I said, we've been doing it longer than I've been here on a lot of these.
So if we go forward and we decide to increase these rates again, then we would have to change the entire ordinance in
Well,
order to change
you would
these
change
rates?
this part of the ordinance. You would amend it, I guess, would be the proper word.
So, moving forward, if we decide to do this, what is going to be the base cost for each individual resident? And how much would they have to pay upfront for?
What do you mean up
A
front?
new one
For
or
the
a currently
change.
one? A new
Current-
residence or?
current
or so-
residents.
Okay.
I don't, so I can't really do math on this because everyone uses such different amounts on water and wastewater. I mean, we could come up with an average, it was in the workshop. I know that they talked about, if you go, you're talking about $36 on your base rate, on sewer, or excuse me, on your sewer base rate. Most people are not using over the 5,000, so it would be a flat $36. Now, if you're talking about going over 5,000, then yes, you'd start at, I believe, the $4.50 cents is what I thought it said. Just a minute, let me look at it.
So when you come to my house and you put the new piping, or you put the new meter,
473.
all of that stuff in place,
Oh, no. So if
when I get billed, I'm going to get billed what?
No. So what you're talking about is maybe like if you're an existing customer and you have a problem with your water meter, it's the city's responsibility after so long to take care of that. You've already paid your one time coming in. These fees and codifying these are a lot to do with just development. So when we have a developer come in,
customers.
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
This is making sure that those who are vested, such as yourself and the members of the council and residents, are not footing the bill for development that's coming in, who's going to utilize this, build all this out, and then say, well, it's too bad that the city loses almost $1,500 on a water meter box. We're going to get 100 of them because we're going to build 100 houses. So those fees is an attempt to address that and make sure that, again, the people who've been here, who've built the system, are not footing the bill for new people moving in, that they're paying their own way to establish what they're going to use.
Okay. So this,
If you will, come to the microphone. Yeah, just state your name. State your name for the
Frederick
record.
Johnston,
Okay, go ahead.
and, yeah, it's kind of like, the project that's over here on,
Country Lane Estates.
yeah, that's it, I just couldn't remember the name of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, them people are gonna end up paying these fees instead of the current residences paying the fees.
If we hurry up and get it
The
enacted.
ones that have been established here.
Yes.
Yeah, the established people were.
Yeah, if our meter went bad for no fault of our own, you would give me a new meter.
Yes, ma'am.
Right.
You wouldn't be paying.
Right.
So, but let me give you an example. You know, you buy the empty lot next to your house, and you say, I want to build a new house. Obviously, then capacity fees come in if that house or that property didn't already come with connections. If you bought a piece of real estate and it already came with connections, there's already a water meter box, there's already a sewer connection, you're not going to be affected by those fees. This is talking, many of them, about new builds. Now with exception. So for example, if you look down there in the sheet there for water fee schedule, you have meter testing fee, $125, and it says new category. Well, that is new. Someone comes in and makes the accusation that our meter is defective. So we have a calibrated meter down at the barn. We hook it up alongside their meter, so we have to go to their house, pull their meter, put a temporary one in, go back to the barn, hook it up. We run a 10-minute check. The same flow should register on both meters and show that, and if it does, there's nothing wrong with that meter if it operates effectively and matches a calibrated meter. So then we take it back, go back to their house, take out the temporary one, put it back in the one that's assigned to their home, and they want us to do that just because they don't think that they use that much water. So we need a way of saying, if we don't find a deficiency on the city side, they need to pay for that time and that testing that's required. Now, if it comes back defective, they don't owe that $125, and the ordinance says that, it references that. But those are the types of fees that every other system does that we've just kind of, unfortunately, not updated for quite some time and gotten with those things.
Okay, I just want a clarification, because I thought that this was in reference to us switching everything out and then moving forward.
Yes, ma'am. The only time we would switch everything out would be AMI, and again, that cost wouldn't be a residential cost. That would be if council decided to go down that way with funding sources. But this is talking primarily about new development and new meters.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Fuller.
Just a question about existing residents that are not provided sewer. And if they need to tap after this time when sewer is provided, is there a provision whereby they're going to get the same advantage as people originally got? When I came into the city and I tapped in, and they had just gave me the opportunity, I didn't have to pay anything. And so where is that?
So, Mr. Fuller, you're referring to something that wouldn't be an ordinance. You're referring to what we call septic to sewer programs. That's funded through SWIFMA, DEP, and other regulatory EPA agencies.
Some kind of block grant.
Right, and so what they do on that is when they develop new line through grants and offer new connections, let's say for folks who are outside of the sewer zone right now that we offer, when that line extension is done, those connections for a limited period of time, like a year to a year and a half, are offered at absolutely no charge to the residents that are already there invested. This is specifically referring to a planned development that comes in, develops property, creates homes, creates condos, creates, apartments or whatever the case, and they're adding on to that system. So even the capacity fees have exemptions for residents being connected if it's a city-governed project and if it's a city extension of lines.
Good, I'm happy.
The things that would affect the normal resident at their home are going to be the increase on the water rate, the increase of the consumption of water rate, the increase of the sewer base rate, and the increase of the sewer consumption.
So on a monthly basis, I'm looking at about $60.
Yes, ma'am, that's about right, yes, ma'am. But again,
Whereas before it was,
again, this is, I will say honestly, this is something that we've talked about for a couple years, and we're going into our 16th year of no adjustment. I would have loved if we had a time machine to go back, make small little increments, and we'd be there. We wouldn't be talking about this. We'd just have a consumer price index change every year, minimal, 1%, 2%. But unfortunately, we've been operating, and it's not just the general fund that's been borrowing from the electric. We've been utilizing the electric for other departments and infrastructure. And so at some point, we can kick the can down the road, but I would say that those that we rely on to advise us have said that we're at the end of the road. There's no further place to kick it.
It's kind of like running a business.
Yes, sir.
If we don't keep in tune when there's increases, eventually we're going to go bankrupt. So if we don't get with the latest and current of things, our future is not great.
And that's what they've been telling us for a year or two.
I know ever since I've been on council.
Yeah,
they've
that's
been
why
saying
we're
that.
here. You're exactly right. And the people from rural water have told us that. The people who've loaned us money have told us that. Stephen has told us that.
The auditors.
City managers told us that. The auditors have told us that. We know it. We just have to go for it. Whether, and you're right, it is about a $50 a month increase. You think it's 60?
Unfortunately,
Who's breathing?
we're paying for, we're paying today for what
Yeah.
has been neglected in the past by increasing
CPI
rates.
increases we haven't done in
Right.
in 20 years.
And we're gonna be the bad guys.
And that is actually put in here in one of the sections of the ordinance. It addresses and prevents that from ever having to happen again. It basically, on the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the same thing we did in the gas ordinance change, it basically states that that CPI will occur every October. A notice will be sent out to let folks know, and if we maintain that CPI change, hopefully, in none of our times, we'll have to come back and be talking about some of these rate issues again.
Okay, again, this is an ordinance. It does get read twice. So at this point, I would ask for a motion for ordinance 2023-722 on first reading.
I make a motion ordinance 2023-722 be approved on first reading.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have any further discussion?
Yes. I'm sorry. So is there no way for us to decrease the amount that, I mean, it doesn't have to be by a lot that the residents are paying, because commercials, it's a business. They can actually do write-offs and different things to kind of compensate for the amount of money that the amount of the increase. Unfortunately, residents cannot. Just question, I mean, is there any way for us to?
So I believe if you go back and look at the definition, I mentioned the ERU, and so some of those categories, what those tell you, and I'll look at it here for you. It's an equivalent residential unit, and that is deceiving because it's not just talking about residents, it's talking about the whole system and breaking it up. And those equations, that's already broken down. We've never had a tiered system. The tiered system is the addressing. Their base rate on the commercials are the difference that they kick in. Without that difference, you have a shortfall of operational cost. If you do that on the resident side, you'll have a shortfall of operational cost. If everyone remembers the workshop, you had that graph again that stated, even if we make these changes, with the increase in costs and all the things related to the water and wastewater programs, we are only meeting cost. Even with these changes, we do not have one capital item that can be afforded by the rate structure. So their recommendation was to do 75% increases, 75% increases, 75%, like 4 years in a row, and the 5th year to do a 25% increase. We're not recommending that. We're asking for one increase and then to go by the CPI. But that basically means that we'll never be in a position through water and wastewater to fund capital improvements.
So this is like a break even?
This is a break-even point,
and
yes,
not a-
ma'am.
Okay.
I would ask if the finance director or the city manager have comment before we move on.
Well, the city manager does. Aaron?
I hear you.
Go ahead, you're. All right, very good. Thank you, thank you. I know this is tough. I know it's hard to do. I will tell you that none of the numbers are out of line with what my requirement was for this year of assuring that the enterprise funds as a across the board benchmark, at least we're making enough money to operate. And so giving the staff that instructions, you know, this is how we move forward with the workshops from rural water and stuff like that. And I can tell you, and correct me if I'm wrong, Donald, but I do believe that all these figures are in line with the recommendations of rural water. Is that not correct?
They're identical, other than the first 5,000 gallons of sewer, we rescinded that on the wastewater.
Yeah, so it's not like we actually jumped up. I mean, actually, we're just breaking even, and like you said, there was almost a double figure for capital. And so I'm really not asking to make money on this enterprise fund. I'm simply asking not to lose money on it, and that's going to help us in other places. And so that's kind of where I stand on this. There's a lot of technical data here, a lot of stuff that is obviously going to help us in the future. These rate increases are correct. Mr. Cox is absolutely correct in the sense of, you know, this is, you know, we are going to bear the brunt of this because of, you know, the decisions that were made in the past. I do apologize for not having the comparisons to you earlier. So that obviously was a miscommunication on our part, which we will correct. And does anybody have any questions of me before I turn it over to Mr. Bloom?
Yes. So
Yes, ma'am.
if this is a break even, then how is it beneficial? If we're not adding anything to
If you're asking,
capital?
if you're asking me, I don't lose money here, so I don't have to take money from the other enterprise funds to shore up the water and wastewater. So it no longer becomes a drain. I mean, could one day with this cost price index make it to where we may make some money? Yes, ma'am, absolutely.
Okay.
But I just don't know how I make that happen. I mean, the original number was double what this was, and was almost, you couldn't even ask for it. It's almost impossible to even consider it. I don't like the numbers that are there, and I specifically don't like the numbers on the schools, but you are correct, Ms. Hines, in the sense that these institutions can budget for them and can make them, and yes, there is going to be an impact on the residents. I agree 100%. I just don't know any other way of doing it, other than borrowing more money from the other enterprise funds back to the water and shoring them up. So,
There's a motion on the floor. I call for a vote.
Can we not listen to Mr. Bloom first?
Call for a vote. We had plenty of time for him to speak.
He was waiting on his turn. I'll ask the council, do you want to vote? You want to hear what Mr. Bloom has to say?
I want to hear what he has to say. I mean, why would not give him the opportunity to
Mr.
speak?
Bloom, do you have comment? I understood that you were in line behind Mr.
Yeah, the only thing I just wanted to point out, everything else I agree with, just that this still makes us, the city, very reliant on grants. So that is still going to be a big component at moving forward. So just keep that in mind. Otherwise, no, I agree with everything that's been brought forward to the council.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Robinson is right. We do have a motion on the floor and a second. At this time, if there's no further discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will move, we will
Thank you,
close.
council.
Thank you. Okay, we will close the public hearing, and we will move to item H, which is discussion with possible action, city clerk performance evaluation. Ms. Patterson.
Good evening, council. The background and description to this, the purpose of the city clerk evaluation and development report is to increase communication between the city council and the city clerk concerning the performance of the city clerk in the accomplishments of his or her assigned duties and responsibilities and the establishment of specific work-related goals and objectives. The evaluation form consists of 8 sections with a total of 31 subsections that require a rating of a score of 1 through 5. 1 being unsatisfactory to 5 being outstanding, or N/no being not observed. Which just means you didn't get to observe that type of behavior. So the physical impacts, a possible wage increase was approved and adopted into the 23-24 fiscal year budget, so it is there. Recommended action, I have reviewed and reconciled the evaluations presented by the individual council members to include President Deborah Jones, Vice President Jerry Robinson, council members Michael Cox, Zach Bullock, and Darphinus Hines. The recommended action is for the city council members to review the collective evaluation forms as well as Ms. Wright's self-evaluation to determine satisfaction of job duties as well as possible increase into her salary. Factors involved in the final evaluation, Mr. Robinson did note that noted 1 NO rating in his evaluation. So due to his lack of opportunity to observe Mrs. Wright's ability in that section, his 31 subsections were reduced to 30 in the mathematical equation used to produce the overall average score. So as noted, I do have Mr. Cox's, I just need to note that I do need your signature on yours, and I'll catch that with you, Mr. Cox, in just a little bit. Final score and recommended salary increase. Bullet points are Ms. Wright achieved an average score of 4.66%, which translates into exceeding job standards according to the performance evaluation form. Ms. Wright's current salary is $62,067.20. Ms. Wright's anniversary date was September 23rd of this year, 2023. There are 26 pay periods per year for the city of Williston. If an increase in Ms. Wright's salary is approved, retroactive pay will be due to for pay periods extended back to the week of September 25th, 2023.
Okay, you have the compilation in your packet, and you see the score is, and I just want to comment that no score was less than, everything exceeds job standards or outstanding, all scores from all participants. I don't know how you want to proceed with this. I can tell you that I have some numbers here. That I've looked at the 4.66%, I've looked at the 5%, I've looked at 6%, and I've even looked at 10%. I can tell you she is one of our charter officers. I also have a very quick salary survey that we did of areas around us. And the 4 that we looked at, Dunellen is the only one that has a certified clerk, and they're currently making $74,000. Bronson does not have a certified clerk, and they are making less than she is. However, the city of Alachua has a deputy clerk who is making almost $10,000 more a year. And Cedar Key has someone who's also not certified who is making right at the same amount. And I was only hired in March of 22. I don't know where y'all want to start. But knowing that she's a charter officer that's making, the only other comment I would make too, that when I looked at the salary survey, the staffing salary, what am I trying to say? The staffing pattern, the staffing sheet with all employees staffing on it.
The staffing plan?
Staffing plan, you're so smart, thank you very much. There are currently 11 people who make more than this charter officer. Some of whom have been here less time than she has, some who have been here longer period than she has. So I don't know where you want to go with that. Y'all tell me and I'll give you some figures, unless you want me to throw them out there.
Well, I know across the board when we were doing our budget, it seemed like there was a lot of people getting $4, $5, $6 an hour raises. Last year, the percentage that we did, do you remember off the top of your head what it came out to, wasn't it only like $1 an hour or something?
Yes.
All that talk and discussion and
Yeah.
spent hours
Yep.
trying to figure out a percentage that equivalent to $1 an hour.
That's why I
Which
gave
is
up
a
on that this
joke.
time.
Right, which is a joke.
Yeah. The 4.66% is maybe $600 more than $1 an hour. So I'm not even going there.
Yeah.
If you did 6%, it would take her to 65,791. If you did 10%, it would take her to 68. She's currently making 62. So when you do $1 an hour, that's $2,080 per hour. So if you did $2 an hour, what is that? Help me, you math. Thank you. 416. Okay. Now my mathematicians are sitting back there. So that's $4,000 more a year, a little bit more.
I say that would be the minimum.
That would be the minimum. That's why I actually put the 10% on here, which would be right at $6,000 raise, which is 10%. And I can say even the Social Security people got that much this past
Right.
year.
A lot of people got.
They
way
did.
more
They
than
got,
that.
they got 9. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty bad. Even they got a 9%.
I think it's 2 years in a row of absolute outstanding
Mhm.
reviews.
Yep.
And it's time that she gets paid like a clerk's supposed to be paid, in my opinion. I'm good with the 10%.
See Mr. Robinson calculating.
That still
I
keeps
won't
her-
disagree.
That still keeps her lower than what, from based on them numbers, what a lot
It
of
is
other
lower.
are making, so.
Yeah. I would entertain a motion for 10%.
I'll make a motion to give her a 10% raise.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. If my calculations are right, that brings her to 68,274. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. We have one more round of public participation, if anybody has anything to add. If not, I'm trying to find my agenda, buried it over here under this 140-page ordinance. Are there any other announcements at this time from anyone?
Madam President,
Yes, ma'am.
just briefly,
Yes.
just a reminder, our ethics training at our office, December 6th from 4 to 8 p.m. There will be good food, there will be drinks, there will be ethics. If you plan, if you plan on coming, please let us know so we can make sure that we have enough food to feed everyone.
Are you going to send an invitation, or we just need to tell you?
I think that an invitation was sent out, but I can resend. I will resend
I
it.
haven't seen it if there was.
Oh, okay. Well, I will make sure that it gets sent, for
Because I
real.
would has anybody seen it?
December 6th.
I haven't seen it. So yes, if you would send it, we could respond.
Absolutely.
That would be wonderful. Any other announcements? Ms. Latricia, I saw something. Congratulations on a wonderful job.
Thank you all, council. I appreciate that very much. And I continue to strive to make Williston in everybody's mouth. Everybody's been talking about Williston. When I went to my clerks conference in Daytona Beach, a lot of the clerks said that their council members were talking about Williston.
That's
And
wonderful.
I was happy to hear that.
Yep. We didn't say
So
what they were
again, thank
saying, but they were
you.
talking about us, right? Okay, anything else for the good of the cause? I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Thank you, sir.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We will adjourn at 8:50, which is a whole lot earlier than I thought it was going to be. Thank you very much.